Henk Rogers is on a mission to end the use of carbon-based fuel. Founder and chairman of Blue Planet Foundation, a nonprofit playing a key role in Hawaii's 100% renewable electricity plan, he is also the CEO of Blue Planet Energy, featuring blue-ion battery systems. As a pioneer of video games I've enjoyed playing all my life, he's a personal hero of mine. Jeff Mikulina is the executive director of the Blue Planet Foundation. He's also chair of the Hawaii Green Infrastructure Authority, overseeing $150 million in bond funding to help democratize access to clean energy solutions. Join us as we look at the state's 100% renewable by 2045, the Hawaii model. Thank you.
How many of you have heard my ambulance story? Okay, I get to tell it. I'm a recovering computer game entrepreneur. Sold a company in 2005. A month later, I found myself in an ambulance on the way to Stroud Hospital with 100% blockage of the widowmaker, which is the thing that'll kill you if it's blocked. If I'd have been on the Big Island that day, I would have died. And I'm lying there in the back of the bus, so to speak, and I'm going like, you gotta be kidding me, I haven't spent any of the money yet. That was the first thing I thought. But the second thing I thought was, no, I'm not going, I still have stuff to do. And what did I mean by that? And obviously I recovered. Doc said you're going to be just fine. And so as I'm recovering, I said, what did I mean by stuff? Because I was really serious about that. I was going to hold my breath for 15 minutes if I needed to. And then I thought, well, I've already made enough money, so my wife doesn't need me anymore. I've already put my kids through college, so they don't need me anymore. So I'm pretty much done with everything that I set out to do. And I was like, what do I mean? And so then I played it forward to the end of my life. And what is it the thing that's going to piss me off if I didn't do anything about it or not do enough about it? And the first one came to me, I fell in love with the ocean when I first moved to Hawaii when I was 18. And I lived on the beach. I went from New York City, Manhattan, to the beach in Hawaii. It's like, what a change. I fell in love with the coral, and I read it in the newspaper while I was still in a recovery room. Oh, by the way, we're going to kill all the coral in the world by the end of the century. And I think to myself, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Because, coral is just something that we happen to be measuring. What about all of the other... And the other day we heard about phytoplankton. What about all the little things that make up the food chain in the ocean? I said, okay, so my first mission is to end the use of carbon-based fuel. I have 3 others. I'm not here to talk about them today. I started a foundation. The first thing we did was we put on a conference, kind of like this. We had Robert Kennedy Jr., we had James Woolsey, we had Dennis Hayes, Hunter Lovins. We had Frank Sesno doing a CNN-style debate, and then we thought, well, where should we go from here? So I called on. By that time, we had a board of advisors. I got 20 people in the room. We had a facilitator, and we figured out what do we need to do from here. Are we going to do more conferences? And the answer was no. We're going to become an action-oriented foundation, and so we have to change completely. And we had the wrong CEO, and then we went into a hunt for a CEO, and we found Jeff. So, what did you do after I hired you?
I didn't know it was a performance review. Thank you, Henk, and obviously thank you for your support over the years. I want to just share a few stories from Hawaii's journey, observations, and moving towards 100%. But let me start this story. Folks are familiar with Hawaii. It's been in the news recently. We have an awful lot of renewable energy resources, sometimes more than we care for. You might have been following that disaster unfolding over in the Puna district on Hawaii Island. But unfortunately, that really overshadowed a different disaster that happened a month earlier in April 14th and 15th. The largest downpour in U.S. history happened in North Kauai. We received 50 inches of rain in 24 hours. It not only broke the rain gauge, it broke the record. I just translated that into, since we're in Colorado, translate that to snow. That's approximately 54 feet of snow in 24 hours, if it were to come down in that form. So while the lava is a natural disaster, this is a man-made disaster that we created for ourselves. We're seeing the effects of climate change in Hawaii. We're due for another huge storm, a Maria-like storm that Puerto Rico experienced. These were all the storms in 2015. You can see how we're just a sitting duck, and we really dodged a bullet that year, but we're probably not going to dodge one in the future. We're experiencing sea level rise. We had a king tides event when the moon aligned just perfectly earlier this year. Some roads were impassable. This is what Waikiki Beach looked like during those king tides events. Can you imagine if Hawaii loses its beaches, we lose our economy? I mean, this is really, the heart of our economy in Hawaii. So we were vulnerable. We're completely vulnerable, yet just a decade ago, we were completely dependent on imported oil, the most dependent state in the nation. We bring oil in about 50 million barrels a year, cost about $5 billion at the time. About a third of it goes to electricity, a third goes to ground transportation, and then a third goes to air travel. One super tanker per week habit, that was our addiction, and it ran everything. I used to joke that we're pretty much one super tanker away from becoming Amish in Hawaii. I said that, I felt bad. I shouldn't, what if they see it on the internet? Then I realized they probably won't see it on the internet. So, folks remember that radio show, Clicking Back, or it's called Car Talk on NPR? People remember that? It was been off the air, but unfortunately, one of the guys passed away. One of my favorite callers, he calls in, he starts explaining how his car won't start, the pistons are seizing, the transmission is shot. He asks one of the guys, click or clack, he says, what should I do? And they said, oh, that's easy. You just pop the hood, you reach in, unscrew the radiator cap, and then you screw in a new car underneath that. I thought that was the perfect analogy for what we need to do to our energy system. And we think Hawaii is the perfect place to test this new energy system. Not only technologies, but policies, the programs to make sure we can go there in a just and equitable manner, the innovation of business models. Hawaii is the perfect sandbox for this experiment. And so with great appreciation, Henk launched Blue Planet Foundation a decade ago with his wife, Akemi, and we were off to the races. So we started doing the typical stuff, with the idea that Hawaii is the place where the future should happen first. Islands are unique places where we can innovate quickly. So we did, the legislative advocacy. We pushed some good laws like community solar. We had the first in the nation carbon tax, a barrel tax for the oil we imported. We do this annual report card because you can only manage what you measure. We have some copies if you're interested, or it's online, sort of tracking how we're doing across all the sectors. Did a lot of work with students, getting them engaged. We do daily stuff today in classrooms, kind of hands-on experiential things. We did a big light bulb exchange, hundreds of thousands of light bulbs in competition among schools, who can exchange the most. But we realized we were really working in a rigged system. We weren't going to get to where we need to get 100% clean energy if we kept on, biting around the edges. We would go to these long-term utility planning sessions and look at what the investments were for the utility in the future. At the time, we had a pretty radical renewable portfolio standard, 40% by 2030. But that meant we were 60% fossil in 2031. And the utility was thinking about those investments in power plants and transmission for that future. They were also looking at imported liquefied natural gas as a solution. This was during the fracking boom in the mainland, and to the utility, they said this is our low carbon, low cost future, importing liquefied natural gas with a 30, 40-year contract. So we had to do something different. So in 2013, we proposed something pretty radical. We said, well, what if we set a new goal of 100% renewable energy by the year 2040 or earlier? So we introduced the bill at the legislature, and you can imagine how well that went. The governor at the time, who was a big supporter of importing liquefied natural gas, called us magical thinkers in his State of the State that year. And then he went further and he called us, be Harry Potter. He followed this up recently, and he literally said, you guys, this is all Harry Potter. There really is no Hogwarts school. Challenge accepted. We introduced the bill in 2013. It didn't get very far. 2014, it went a little bit further, and then 2015, we pulled out all the stops and did a huge grassroots campaign. A lot of students were involved. That was key. We had some decision leaders. This was an op-ed written around Earth Day in 2015 by 3 individuals who would never think would be on the same page. A former governor, the first Asian American governor in the United States, Governor AREI-AREDAY, a large real estate developer, and then the dean of our engineering college at the University of Hawaii, just giving some credibility that this 100% goal isn't magical thinking, it's actually possible. Did a lot of other things. We got some other maybe unlikely allies on board. The local union, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. 3 reasons that they came to the table and supported this. We have to admit, number one, they were in contract negotiation with the utility. So coming to the table on our side was pretty easy. At the time, the utility said, this 100% is either impossible or impossibly expensive. Number 2, this was a goal that was far enough out that the workers, it didn't really impinge on workers today. So we had a little breathing room. But the third thing, and this was key, is we had pledged to have a pathway for retraining workers into a clean energy future. And I think that's going to be key with these discussions around the country. There has to be a pathway for workers in this clean energy future. Something else is happening that was really remarkable that made it possible to pass 100% in Hawaii. Rooftop solar was just starting to boom in 2008. The utility at the time said, this is going to be kind of big. We had 1 megawatt of rooftop solar in Hawaii in 2008. The utility said, well, by 2015, we're going to have 23 megawatts, which is pretty big growth. 2015 came, we did have 23 megawatts. We actually had 350 megawatts, 15 times more than the utility predicted. Complete disruptive technology, and today nearly 80,000 homes in Hawaii have power plants on their roof. That's 1 in 3 homes in Hawaii. It really, I think, changed the thinking about 100% clean energy with 80,000 people that have power plants on their roof. It was no longer this abstract concept of some future alternative energy. It was keeping the lights on and keeping the bills low. So that really helped. I think people were with us. We did something else that was kind of fun. We developed this app. You can see islandpulse.org. It has the real-time energy usage on the island of Oahu. Then it breaks it down into the generation mix. How much coal, how much solar, how much wind, every half hour. And we put a couple kiosks at the Capitol. One of the problems that we all face is energy is one of these invisible issues. It doesn't really lend itself to, visual or thinking about all the time. But if legislators had to walk past this kiosk every day and see how much coal, how much oil we're using in real time, it just helped keep the issue forefront, we think. Finally, our big push was with kids. We asked a bunch of kids, about 700, to draw what they want their energy future to look like. I think you know what that looks like. We put together a coffee table book, and we brought this around with children and passed out books to legislators. And if you know how legislators work, no one's going to say no to a kid, or a photo with a kid with a book. So it was very effective getting the story out that this was the future speaking. They want to see their future clean. We also ran an ad with these in the local newspaper. So we had a problem though. It came down to the last hours of a legislative session in 2015. The House was on our side, pushing for 100% by 2040 as the RPS goal. The Senate side was carrying the utilities position, which was, okay, the earliest we can do is 2050, 100%. So you can imagine how this went. And I think you remember, Henk, I came to you and I said, do we take 2050 and go to the bank, or do we go for broke? So we went for broke, and like any good legislative outcome, 2045 was the year. And to this day, people say, well, there must have been some economic or engineering analysis behind this date, and you must have ran the numbers. 2045, that's the date. It was super exciting to see the headlines around the world. Great to see the president at the time tweeting about it. What was really exciting, though, California, the year later, Kevin De Leon introduced Senate Bill 100, and he introduced it again last year, a 100% RPS for California by 2045. I had a chance to talk with Senate President last year when he came out to Hawaii, and I said, how did you guys pick 2045 as the date? And he looked at me like I'm an idiot, and he said, that's the date, right? I said, no, that was a compromise. You're the 5th largest economy in the world. You pick your own date. 2040, 2030, we should have picked an earlier date. So something else interesting happened. As soon as that ink was dry on that law in 2015, the utility changed their tune completely. Obviously, it was law. They had to do it. But they really embraced it. And if I were to stress anything, the power of setting that vision for the engineers in the company, for the leadership of that company, this really fostered collaboration and aligned the planning. Engineers had a new constraint to optimize around. And they did. They did a great job in looking at, what are the possible scenarios going forward. Let me skip this video. We have a huge problem, though. Unlike the mainland, Hawaii is not tied to other states. We can't share energy back and forth like the city of Aspen can do in reaching its 100% renewable energy, what it has right now.
We don't even share energy with each other, with the islands. We have 7 distinct grids on each island in Hawaii. They're not connected electrically. So this makes it real hard for a small grid, they're essentially microgrids, to balance that load and supply. But the utility did it with the help of some modeling from University of Hawaii, some folks from Berkeley, looked at a dispatch model in the year 2045, running different weather scenarios. What would this look like under a whole range of options? If we maximize solar, if we did offshore wind, if we did geothermal and hydrogen storage, and then ran this through various scenarios. First of all, the daily balance. In this particular scenario, overproducing solar during the day, and then having a lot of flexible load, a lot of storage, and charging EVs in the middle of the day. But then you have to look at the seasonal energy balance too. What if we, like the previous panel was talking about, had that unfortunate, we had weeks of rain. We had 40 days and 40 nights of rain once in Hawaii. There you have to look at long-term storage. In this case, the 2 options that emerged were using biofuels, locally produced, or hydrogen storage that you could store long-term. Regardless, we're talking about something a quarter century from now. We know that technology is going to evolve, but the fact that the utility did this modeling and found that they could do it, it gave a lot of people comfort. But something else happened. After they did the modeling, they said, not only is this achievable by 2045, we can do it 5 years ahead of schedule in 2040, and using conservative estimates, it'll probably save $6 to $9 billion less than business as usual. So again, the power of setting that vision, unlocking the utilities, engineers into thinking differently about this problem. And we're on track. We see steady growth across all the islands. This was updated last year. The 2 numbers here, this is the 4 main islands. You can see the blue is the average statewide, we're at 27%. The green, though, is exciting. That's the maximum. And you see 3 islands that are near or above 80% and a few hours during the day. Kauai running 100% solar for a few hours last year. We realize that policy and technology, it's not going to be enough. Our carbon budget doesn't really allow 25 years to get there. We have to move much faster at a different speed and scale. Last week, we launched a campaign called We Are 100, featuring 100 voices from around the state, from every different group of actions that people are taking to help us move faster to 100%. We want to feature the littlest action to the biggest action and really make this a social campaign that we can get there faster. Finally, we realize electricity is not enough. We have to tackle transportation, and this is really our next big challenge in Hawaii. Fortunately, it aligns really well with our clean energy goals for electricity. But today, we burn over 1 gallon per person per day in Hawaii. If you can imagine, we're on tiny islands, but we love to drive. We have more registered vehicles than people with driver's licenses. So we've been doing some things, pushing electric vehicles. That's obviously going to be a large solution. Did a parade through Waikiki with electric vehicles. We just launched an electric vehicle salesperson certification program to help the sales process and get people more familiar with electric vehicles. We brought our first battery electric bus to Honolulu a couple of months ago. And we worked with all 4 mayors to sign a declaration that we will set a 2045 clean transportation goal as well. So now we have both. We have electricity and transportation in Hawaii. We've set that vision for our clean energy future, and now it's really up to us to execute. So that's what Blue Planet Foundation has done. We've really set the vision in Hawaii, treating Hawaii like the sandbox, the policies and the programs, and technologies and business models that we can perfect there. Hopefully we can spread to other places. And that's what we're doing now. We just launched a project last year called Project Repower, hoping to spread that success in Hawaii and transferring it to other states. We know there are a lot of groups out there doing great work, so we want to carve out the niche of working specifically with state legislators in advancing bold clean energy goals. We saw the power of 100% in Hawaii. We really want to use that psychology and get other states to adopt 100% clean energy targets. So we're currently working with about 8 states, and we have a 3-tier approach. We're working with NCEL, the National Caucus of Environmental Legislators. They have 1,000+ legislator members, spreading the word at their local gathering. This year it's going to be in Los Angeles. And then we brought a cohort back to Hawaii to do a deeper dive into the issues in those states. We soon hope to work with a handful of other key states as well. And we're excited to see last week, Massachusetts, one of those states, the Senate passed 100% by 2047. I guess they didn't get the message about 2045, but still, it's great to see another state getting closer. California got very close too, except for some of the labor issues. Washington was also moving a bill this year. We're going to bring those states back and really do a deep dive into those concerns. And Hawaii had its own issues, and we had to work to overcome those. Every state's unique, we recognize that, but we want to work with the states to go through concern by concern. We know some of these things are transferable. Working with the unions, the messaging, the grassroots effort, these are things that are going to be pretty similar, I think, across the states. Again, it's 3 tiers that we're looking at. 1 is kind of a broad education, 2 is a deeper dive, and this 3rd tier is where we really want to get into the states and help launch campaigns and get 100% clean energy bills passed. And this is where I reach out for partners and for help in making this happen. We had a great success in Hawaii. We want to replicate this across the country and eventually across the globe. So if you're interested, Repower from our website, please check it out. So Hawaii is a test bed. We are a model, we believe, of what's possible. We believe what we can perfect in Hawaii can be modeled across the globe. We're just a drop, though. We're really running out of time. We're running out of ideas faster than we're running out of carbon. And we hope to work with you in advancing 100% clean energy globally. So let's work together. Mahalo for your time.
I cede my time to the gentleman. No, just kidding. So my mission is not to end the use of carbon-based fuel in Hawaii, although it kind of feels like that's what we're doing. So the question is, where do we go from here, and how do we do this thing worldwide? And the state thing, going state by state in the U.S., because the federal government isn't going to move for the next couple of years, we think, I think is a good strategy for the United States. And what about the rest of the world? And again, how does the Hawaii model affect the rest of the planet? And so we thought about that, or I thought about that, and I thought, well, what else is it about Hawaii that's like other places in the world? And the answer is that we're a bunch of islands. And there are hundreds of thousands of islands everywhere else in the world that have the exact same problems of Hawaii. They import oil or diesel for their electricity, and they're just basically stuck. I mean, I went to visit a whole bunch of islands in Fiji, Tonga, Tuvalu. I mean, it's just insane what's going on in those places. You think it's expensive to send diesel to Hawaii? It's more expensive to send diesel to those places. So there are places, well, Hawaii, the highest is as high as 45 cents per kilowatt hour, and there's some places in the Pacific where they're paying $1 per kilowatt hour. And these are not people that have a great source of income, that have like tourists, like dying to go there. These are people that are struggling, that don't really have a source of, for their economy. So the world has gotten together and said, the World Bank, those kinds of people, gotten together and say, you know what, we can help you, and how they're going to help them. And so the problem is that they put up money for PV, but then of course there's no storage. And so then the problem is that they have to go back to diesel at night. So they didn't really solve the problem, they only solved part of the problem. And so I started thinking about that as an individual. So I said, what's the problem with storage? Why isn't there more storage around? And so I said, let me take my ranch off the grid, disconnect from everything, and see what happens. And that was 5 years ago, maybe 6. I did the same thing with my house in Honolulu. We declared energy independence on July 4th, 4 years ago, and every year we have a big party celebrating how many years we've been energy independent. I'm energy independent for the ranch. I'm also energy independent for my ground transportation, because I only ever charge my car at home. Now, so what are the things that I learned about being off grid? Well, for one, it was not nearly as hard as I thought it was going to be. In fact, it was almost a piece of cake. You could say My solar array and then storage, I would pay again as much for my storage as I paid for my solar array. So instead of a 3-4 year return on investment, I'm now looking at a 6 or 8 year return on investment. But battery prices are coming down. And why aren't batteries becoming more and more accepted? So we got frustrated. We created our own battery system and spun it out. I have a little lab on the Big Island called Blue Planet Research, where we do all these things that that I'm crazy about. I'm sort of how can I say, a little eccentric guy that has made money out of computer games. Wait, there's somebody else like that, isn't there? No. And so now we have a company that helps people either go off grid or stay off grid. It's called Blue Planet Energy. It's our first spin-off from the research lab. And what we do is primarily residential or small business. Our primary market was Hawaii because we have the highest energy cost in the country. But mainland sales have surpassed Hawaii sales. And now Puerto Rico sales have surpassed everybody. So we are in this like crazy growth period. And the problem that we're having right now is that we make everything in Hawaii and then ship stuff overseas. That's ridiculous. So what we need to do is set up production facilities in California and in Puerto Rico so that we can service those markets more directly and more affordably.
We'll take some questions.
Yes, let's take some questions. You have a question? I thought you were the answer guy.
Depends on the day.
The mic's on the way, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm interested in, you guys were principally behind the initiative to get the 100% by 2045 mandate passed into law. So congratulations, that's a really big deal. Especially, yeah, I think they deserve a hand. Especially since Hawaii gets its power from, dirty bunker fuel that's pushed across the ocean in these super tankers at, 2 miles per gallon or whatever it is. And so how can we take that model and then replicate it? I know that I saw that you have a graph, into the rest of the country. But maybe, this is a two-part question, but maybe before that, how do you plan on achieving the 100% mandate? And even though 2045, I'd like to see that reduced to 2025 would be better. But how are we going to do that?
All right, I think, Chip, I understood two questions. First, how do we get there? And so the utility has gone through a long-term plan, and we're on track to achieve that. Most importantly, the 100% goal is really helping us avoid stranded assets. And we were on track to invest a whole bunch in LNG, in other fossil, dated infrastructure that just won't be around in 10 or 20 or 30 years. We have a tendency to hang on to, we have a lot of nostalgia in Hawaii. We hang on to things forever. We have a power plant operating from 1947 that's still running. So to build a new power plant today would just be crazy. So the 100% thing did two things. One, it kind of hemmed in that side to avoid stranded assets. And then two, it really opened up this innovation and really how do we get there? If we were to sketch out today exactly what that future looks like, I promise you we'll be wrong, just like we were wrong with the rooftop solar. So they've ran a number of scenarios. We have a large RFP out right now for about 350 megawatts of renewable energy in Hawaii, another RFP for storage. And it's just going to be incremental, biting these things off. But Hawaii faces the same challenge that everyone else is facing or will soon face about the challenge of grid defection and customers finding better alternatives than the utility model. So there's really an existential issue that the utility is wrestling with about what is their future. A vertically integrated monopoly that runs off dino juice is not going to work in the future.
So the 100% mandate, I think, it does a lot more than just give the utility their marching orders. Now, compared to 10 years ago when I met with the governor at that time, the woman governor, she told me I knew nothing about it, and she was right. But the ship was going in the wrong direction. And I think by the things that we've done, maybe it's like leverage, we managed to turn that ship in a totally different direction. And so now, when you talk to the government, you talk to the legislators, you talk to the governor, you talk to people, they all believe that we're going in that direction. That change is fundamental thinking is the important change in Hawaii. Once you make that change, then you can do anything. We can bring that 2045 to 2040, 2035. But first of all, let's get everybody thinking that it's possible and that it is going to happen. And that's the thing that we need to achieve in the other states and in the other countries of the world.
Up in the back here, ma'am.
Has people looked at embracing the rooftop space themselves, that they would bring solar systems and install the systems themselves onto people's roofs and maintain ownership of that, so that the owner, whether residential or say a big box space, would then pay HECO as they would have before for the energy?
So her question was, does the main utility, Hawaiian Electric, have they explored getting into the rooftop solar space? And they did. They called it a solar host program, and the solar industry, of course, went bonkers and did everything they could to squash it. So no, the Hawaiian Electric cannot play on that space. We've opened up a little bit through something called community renewables, where they can operate community renewable projects, but they have to provide at least 50% for low or moderate income. So there's kind of a policy call there that the proper place for a regulated utility is to particularly provide for those. So it's still, pretty much the market, but the market is solving the challenge of rooftop solar. We passed another bill this year that's key. It's called performance-based rate making, and we're going through the docket process right now of realigning the utilities incentives, making sure the shareholder incentives line up with our public policy goals and our clean energy goals. And we think that'll be also a real powerful tool to get the utility, number one, solvent in the future and relevant, but also move faster. Because if they have the incentives to speed up rooftop installations, to get more storage, to reduce people's bills, it'll be a much easier pathway for everyone.
What the legislation does is it gives the utility more profit the quicker they move to renewables, and less profit the slower they move. And so their shareholders are going to push them in the right direction.
Thanks so much.